Well, hello again, and welcome back to Principal Tip number 35, From Standard to Response. This week, we'll learn how looking and listening for something as simple as nouns provides teachers with key usable information that improves the connection between their instruction and student performance. You'll remember that last week we discussed how a quick walk around your campus can give you tremendous insight into the type of language students are asked to produce during lessons. We also emphasized a strong correlation between complete sentence use and student achievement. So let's get started. We know that you've heard your teachers express dismay and even frustration that the results of their teaching isn't showing up in their test data. The likely cause is that even though the content concepts are being taught, students struggle to express those concepts clearly and academically. Look, your teachers and coaches likely already spend a great deal of time planning objectives that connect to standards. These standards, as you know, provide a useful window into how students will be assessed. And every standard contains targeted academic nouns like the ones highlighted here. These nouns represent the concepts and ideas that students will need to know and be able to explain academically. And these nouns that show up in lesson objectives are the concepts and ideas that represent the simplest, yet most vital connections that must be made by teachers between their questions and student responses during instruction. So let's look back to our standard and see how the breakdown of targeted academic nouns manifests itself in classrooms every day. And let's see what happens to these nouns as the lesson structure progresses. After careful co-planning in teams or with a coach, posted objectives often maintain many of the academic nouns needed to keep the lesson focused on the requirements of the standards. But here we can see that the question planned and posed to students has already reduced the standard to only a focus on the targeted noun traits. And too often, this minimization or elimination of targeted academic nouns results in a well-intentioned lesson that devolves into something it was never meant to be. And in this case, it became a vocabulary lesson on honesty. When looking at standards, objectives, questions, and responses through targeted academic nouns alone, the lesson breakdown becomes strikingly clear. It's common for principals to prescribe additional planning opportunities in data meetings when student achievement falls below expectation, but it's far more likely that the breakdown is happening during the instruction itself. Let's take a look at what this same lesson looked like right next door. These teachers planned their lesson objectives together and would both describe their teaching as aligned to the standard. But let's see what happens when we look for the same targeted academic nouns during the lesson. This question contains 4 of the targeted academic nouns compared to the first example that only utilized the targeted noun trait. But it is in the student responses and follow-up questions that the use of targeted academic nouns really shines. Notice how the targeted academic nouns become an objective data point that teachers and principals can look for when analyzing effective instruction. And as the principal, you don't even have to be the expert in all the content areas to be able to collect this type of critical data. Take an index card with you on your next observation. Create a 3-column T-chart using the headings Objective, Questions, and Responses. Write out the nouns for each category that you see and hear during the lesson. You'll likely find that the teacher's questions and the student responses do not utilize the targeted academic nouns. You can help your teachers close the gap by first going over this data with them, then ask them to review the targeted academic nouns from their objectives with students at the beginning of every lesson. That way, at the end of lessons, students can help determine how academically they were able to talk about the content they learned. Remember, the most important professional development takes place in the classroom. To learn more about specific ways to improve the performance of all teachers, you can pick up our book, Performance-Based Coaching, through any online book retailer. And for the full version of this tip and many more, you can visit our website at www.clarkconsultingandtraining.com.